Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to start by saying that think for a moment that I'm not a human being. I'm a stray dog, a pariah dog. And I want to develop this metaphor, and I hope that you, by the end of my short talk, understand why I call myself a stray or a pariah dog. I live in India, and the population of India is over 1 billion. It is over 1 billion. There is a stray dog population. I would say that for every 5 Indians, there is 1 stray dog. So you can do the math and figure out how many stray dogs we have in India. I've seen a few stray dogs in Rio. And, Ingrid will tell you that every time I spot a stray dog here, I'm very excited. But I've not seen stray dogs in most parts of the world. But in India, believe me, this is not a hyperbole, this is not an exaggeration. There is at least 1 stray dog for every 5 human beings. And we have a population at last count of over 1 billion. Why are these dogs there? These dogs are there because there's animal lovers who have gone to the Supreme Court and obtained an order which says that these dogs cannot be eliminated. At most, they can be given for adoption, but in a poor country like India, nobody wants to adopt dogs. I mean, people don't have enough to feed their families, so there's no question of adopting and feeding stray dogs. But also that, the other option, of course, is to sterilize them, and so we have NGOs like the Blue Cross that undertake the work of sterilizing stray dogs. But that is easier said than done, because there are that many dogs and they can't be sterilized that easily. So the upshot is that they keep breeding in towns and cities. And, they lead to a whole lot of problems. I hope there are no animal lovers here in this audience, because in my own country, the animal lovers are I'm their biggest enemy, because if I say that the stray dogs bother me, what they say is that, well, you can be run over by a car, and then, so human beings are equally vicious, and so on. And so they are allowed to breed and to proliferate, and, they bite people. If a dog bites you, you can get rabies, which is a fatal disease. There aren't enough rabies vaccines. So, this is a rather grim picture, which, this is my view, of course, and there would be others in India and elsewhere who would disagree with me, but the stray dog for me is a big menace. Now, this talk is, of course, not about dogs, it's about human beings. And, I wish to speak round this word, territory, and the various forms of the word territory, such as territorial. Dogs are territorial, and if you have that many stray dogs on the streets, and they're all territorial, you can imagine that, there are lots of dog wars that also go on. Barking, fighting, snarling at each other, all of that. So the English phrase, it's a dog's life, really comes to mind over here, because these dogs on the street indeed have a very wretched life. But as I said, this is not about dogs, this is about human beings. The view is that human beings are not territorial. On the contrary, we are supposed to be global. But this is what I should like to dispute over here and point out, that we human beings are also really territorial. And you understand this business of our being territorial better if I make connections between territoriality and identity. So I would like to see identity in terms of a couple of constructs, which are very relevant in India. The first is religion as a construct. Again, most parts of the world, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that most parts of the world, Brazil included, have a homogeneity as far as religion is concerned. Not in India. We have every conceivable religion practiced in the country. To start with Western religions, there's a sizable Christian population, a Jewish population, certainly a Muslim population, and then you move on to Eastern religions. Hinduism is the religion of the majority, but there's offshoots of Hinduism, there's Buddhism, there's Jainism, there's Sikhism, and yes, while talking of Western religions, I forgot Zoroastrianism. So how many religious communities does that give you? We have temples, churches, synagogues, mosques, gurdwaras, fire temples where the Zoroastrians or the Parsis worship. We have all of these. All their religious festivals are dutifully celebrated, and every religious festival of every religion is declared a national holiday and so forth. So, so religion is an important construct when we are talking of identity. You might know that one nation, namely India, in 1947 became two nations, India and Pakistan. This was the handiwork of the British who colonized us, and this division, of course, was on the basis of religion. So Pakistan opted to be a Muslim theocratic state, and India did not opt to be a Hindu state, but Hinduism is, of course, the religion of the majority. My next construct would be caste. Caste is peculiar to Hinduism, and there are four castes. There are the Brahmins, who are at the top of the ladder. There are the Kshatriyas, or the warrior caste, that come next. There are the Vaishyas, or the trader caste, that come third. And finally, and this is, I think, well known all over the world, there is the untouchable caste. So untouchability has always been a big issue. It continues to be a big issue. From time to time you hear of untouchables being, the victims of upper caste violence and so on. And to cut a long story short, caste then is an important construct when one is talking about identity. We can take this up later on if anyone in the audience is interested. Last year when I was in Tübingen on an ICCR teaching assignment, I offered a whole course on the literature of the untouchables. And believe me, it was very popular with the German students. The third construct here would be language. Can anyone guess how many languages? Again, in most countries of the world, there is a homogeneity in terms of language. There's a linguistic homogeneity. Not in India. There are at least 35 languages. I can't name all of them. I'll name some of them. Hindi, which is supposed to be the national language, Marathi, Bengali, Punjabi, Tamil, Telugu, Kannada, Malayali, Oriya, and there are many more. Every state has its own language. So language, again, becomes an important construct when you're talking about identity. There are language words, and of course English, because English is also an Indian language. So that's the third construct. The fourth, and I have to say this because it affects me, is sexual orientation. Are there homosexuals and lesbians and bisexual and transgender people in India? And the answer is yes. What is the evidence? In 1999, Penguin Books India issued 2 anthologies of gay writing from India and lesbian writing from India. There's a lot more evidence I can cite based on my own personal life, but I think that the fact that a major publishing house issued these 2 anthologies in 1999 at the turn of the century is enough evidence. Also that every year there is an LGBT, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender film festival that happens in the city of Bombay every single year in the month of May. And then, of course, we have several gay support groups which are well known all over the world. So all this is enough evidence to prove that there are sexual minorities in India as well. Now there are other constructs like class. I'm not going to go into them because that will take too long, but just to recapitulate, so there's religion, there's caste, there's language, and there's sexuality. Let me return to my metaphor of the stray dog and say that I personally feel like a stray dog because these constructs do make people territorial. As I said, there are religious wars. The Hindus and the Muslims have never been able to see eye to eye. In 1992, right-wing Hindu fundamentalists demolished a Muslim mosque in the north of India. And after that, you know, the polarization has only worsened. Even as I speak, since 2014, there has been a right-wing Hindu fundamentalist party known as the BJP, Bharatiya Janata Party, that is in power in the center with an absolute majority, as well as in several federal governments in the state. And you know, there have been various things like to give you a pretty shocking example. The Hindus regard the cow as a sacred animal, and so the Hindus don't eat cow's meat, but the Muslims do. And there have been lynchings in the name of eating beef. So every few months you hear a case of a Hindu mob attacking Muslim people for eating beef, or even on the suspicion of stocking beef. And in some cases, the meat that they have stocked was not beef, it was something else, but these poor guys have lost their lives. So this is just one example. You know, one can give you several examples, but I just have 15 minutes. In terms of caste, oh yes, the untouchables are, you know, they're really badly off, and though the government has various provisions written into the Constitution, which incidentally was authored by Dr. B.R. Ambedkar, who was an untouchable himself, but I don't think that that has really changed things that much. We have in India, interestingly, a phenomenon known as honor killings, and this has to do with marriages. So if 2 people from an upper caste and an untouchable caste decide to get married, 2 heterosexual people, and they, you know, that will meet with a lot of opposition. But if they decide to go ahead with the wedding anyway and elope and get married, there have been instances, and the media calls this honor killing, there have been instances where their own family members track them down, hunt them down, and eliminate them, kill them in the most brutal way possible. So these are parents killing their own children just to preserve the sanctity of caste. Language, yes. In my case, language affects me and makes me a stray dog without territory. That's my whole submission, that not only am I a stray dog, but I think that the worst stray dogs are those that don't have territory, and so they are attacked by other stray dogs who have territory. My language is English. For reasons of birth, let's call it an accident. Again, I can't go into this in too much detail, but I don't have a mother tongue. I don't have a first language. I think in English, I write in English, and all my work is in English, which means that I'm a minority. India is, and this is of course the irony, that it is an English-speaking country. All the top literary publishing houses of the world, starting with Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press, Penguin, HarperCollins, Macmillan, Picador, Hachette India, apart from the English-speaking world, that is the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, the only other country in the world where they have offices is India. I don't think Penguin has an office in Brazil, or even in Germany for that matter. So it's an English-speaking country, and yet English is a minority language. And if you write in English, as I do, you are pariah, because everybody is asking you why you write in English. It's the language of the colonizer. And why are you writing in English? Don't you have a fucking mother tongue in which you can write? That is the question that is asked. Finally, sexuality. In terms of my own sexuality, I'm not gay, I'm queer, and there's a difference. Because gays are moving in the direction of normativity, they want gay marriage and so on. I am concerned with destabilizing normativity wherever I can, right? And that's queer theory. My last book, Criminal Love, which Ingrid mentioned, I think she has it here, she'll show you the cover of it, is about queer theory and what it means to be queer as opposed to what it means to be gay or homosexual. So I'm queer, and that makes me a minority within a minority. So for these reasons, I have no territory. I'm completely stray, and I think that if we are dogs, we are all territorial, and I'm territorial too, but I have no territory. So the upshot is that I'm attacked, I'm brutalized. This is what happens to me. You might see me here and not believe what I'm saying, and of course all of this must be read metaphorically and not literally, but I do believe I'm brutalized. I'm going to end by reading two short poems of mine. The first is called Bed and Breakfast. Checking into a bed and breakfast, we collected our keys and went to our room with a view of the sea. Though it was a double room, the beds were disjoined. We marched back to the lobby to ask for a room with conjoined beds. Those are given to couples, the manager said. We are a couple, we protested. The manager thrust a dictionary into our hands that defined a couple as a man and a woman. I'm a woman, my friend said. Give me a minute. I'm a woman, my friend said. He had shoulder-length hair and a girly walk and wore earrings. He even offered to undress, but the manager was a walnut. All hotels being full, We went back to our room with the disjoint beds. In the veranda, a sparrow had given birth to chirpy chicks. Ships waited to berth. We showered, ordered fried fish and wine. As evening came, we joined our beds, getting rid of the wooden side table placed between them. We smoked a joint, then cuddled up and switched off the lights. A midnight knock. We opened the door. It was the manager asking us to leave. "What's our crime?" we asked, but he pushed us out the front door, flinging our backpacks behind us. "Faggots," he spat, and violently slammed the door. And the second poem is called How We Became Pigs. When a washroom door is opened from the inside, we expect to see one man emerge. We were two. It was a public toilet built by the state. We went in to jerk each other off. Rewild, the slum dwellers, the favela dwellers if you like, in the queue, wearing lungis, forgot they were there for a crap. Some had loose motions. Others were constipated, farting like car exhausts. The men grabbed us, stuffed our heads into the unflushed pot. It was the first time I tasted shit. It had the right texture. If sugar was added, it would taste like an Indian sweet. But soon we were robbed of the pleasure of eating shit by the men whose lungis came off like parted curtains. They pulled our hair and kicked us in the testicles till we squealed like pigs. They called us the scum. Our transformation was complete. First, we ate the food of pigs. Now we grunted like them, growling on all fours. Thank you.